I will get straight to the point. The average U.S. citizen is mad as hell and is tired of waiting for a solution to their financial problems. Increasing numbers of people find themselves stuck in jobs that don't pay a living wage. At the same time, our economy creates ever more billionaires as income and wealth inequality climb to levels that are not only unjustifiable, but are simply obscene. In one of his TED Talks, American investor and billionaire Nick Hanauer compared our current level of economic inequality to that in France just before the revolution. He said the following: "I have a message for my fellow plutocrats and zillionaires. Wake up. It cannot last. If we do not do something to fix the glaring inequities in our society, the pitchforks will come for us. For no free and open society can long sustain this kind of rising economic inequality. It has never happened. There are no examples. You show me a highly unequal society, and I will show you a police state or an uprising. The pitchforks will come for us if we do not address this. It is not a matter of if, but when." I would add that in a modern Western economy, it is no mere coincidence that the appeal of populist politicians has increased, along with the rising levels of inequality. Many people have simply given up waiting for traditional Democratic and Republican politicians to address these problems. Instead, they are attracted to politicians who promise to tear down our current system while offering few details on what the replacement would be. So, how do we prevent such disruption and chaos? We start by acknowledging the problem. Consider this chart. It shows how productivity and real wages have increased since World War II. We see that the two tracked each other fairly closely until the mid to late 1970s. Until that time, wages increased when productivity increased. In other words, when productivity increased, labor shared in that value. After that time, however, we see that productivity continued to increase, but real wages did not. Why did that happen? There is a straightforward explanation. Until the mid-1970s, management needed labor peace in order for their companies to operate. By the mid-70s, however, computerization and automation had advanced to the point where they were viable alternatives to much of human labor. In that brave new world, workers simply had to be less demanding if they wanted to keep their jobs. And in the nearly 50 years since that divergence began, the ever-growing power of automation has only increased the power of business owners over their remaining workers. So, if the share of our GDP being paid to labor continues to decrease, where is that money going? This diagram shows the percentage of wealth in the U.S. possessed by various groups. In 1976, the top 1% by wealth in this country owned 22.6% of national wealth. By 2022, that share had risen to 34.6%. During that time, the share for the bottom 50% did manage to remain stable at slightly over 1%. But the shares for every other category, even those in the 90th to 99th percentile, decreased. And note that the bottom 50% even had a total negative net worth during the Great Recession from 2008 to 2012. That negative net worth was likely due to a lot of mortgages being underwater. Yet another diagram shows even more extreme wealth concentration. In 1989, the top 1% by wealth in this country owned 42.9% of the value in American stock exchanges. By 2022, that share had risen to 53%, over half. The shares for every other category, even those in the 90th to 99th percentile, had decreased. And in those 33 years, the share for the bottom 50% had declined from a mere 1.2% to just 0.6%. And still another way to illustrate this trend is with the well-known Forbes 400 list of richest Americans. When that list first appeared in 1982, it contained 13 billionaires. 40 years later, the list for 2022, even after adjusting for inflation, contains 359 people who would have been considered billionaires in 1982. That is over a 27-fold increase. And of course, there is the well-known ratio of CEO pay to the pay of the average worker. We see that ratio increased from 25 to 1 in 1965 to 278 to 1 in 2018. Now, we can argue at length about whether a CEO is worth 25 workers on the factory floor. But the real question is why that ratio continues to increase. There is a simple answer. The ever-decreasing power of workers means that there is no one left to force the CEO to share the wealth. Of course, we could cite even more ways to show how wealth concentration is increasing, but some things are now obvious. For one, wealth does not trickle down. If trickle-down economics ever did work, it is certainly not working now. And in spite of what many in Washington want us to believe, tax cuts for large corporations and the rich do not pay for themselves. We were told that the last round of tax cuts in 2017 would stimulate economic output so much that tax revenues would actually increase and pay for the tax cut. In reality, the bulk of the tax cut was just used to buy back company stock and increase shareholder wealth. And last but not least, unless changes are made, wealth concentration will only become more extreme. Of course, in a capitalist economy, some degree of wealth inequality is justified, simply because some people work harder than others and some work smarter, and let's face it, some just have better luck. But if income and wealth inequality are at historically high levels and are still rising, then something more is going on. That something is a winner-takes-all economic system that tends toward monopoly and toward a level of wealth and income inequality that is simply unjustifiable. Unfortunately, even today, clueless politicians on the left will claim that all we need to do is strengthen labor laws to fix this problem. I'm sorry, but the automation genie is out of the bottle and there is no putting it back. And recent headlines concerning the growing power of artificial intelligence should make it quite clear that we are not going to retrain or re-educate or relocate our workforce fast enough to overcome that problem. When business owners and investors are given free rein in such an economy, they will put ever more unearned income in their own pockets. Let me say that again for emphasis. If business owners and investors are not restrained, they will put ever more unearned and undeserved income in their own pockets. So, how can we justify the claim that business owners and their investors are receiving unearned and undeserved income? The answer is straightforward. That justification comes from the technological inheritance argument for universal basic income. That argument forms the basis for this entire video channel. For a detailed exposition of that argument, I refer you to the video shown at the bottom of this page. A link to that video is pinned above the comments section of this video. The short version is as follows. We live in a modern economy in which over 80% of our GDP is not the result of the efforts of any individuals or companies. It is produced instead by the value-creating power inherent in society's accumulated knowledge, technology, and infrastructure. That societal heritage is in the public domain, and therefore the value it produces belongs to all of us by simple inheritance, by birthright. The traditional mechanism for distributing that 80+% has been good jobs that paid a middle-class wage. But since that mechanism is no longer sufficient, a new mechanism is needed. That new mechanism is a universal basic income, paid for by the royalties or user fees required of anyone who creates commercial value from their use of our technological inheritance. As always, I thank you for your attention. Please consider subscribing to this channel and pressing the like button so that this important topic will be recommended to more viewers.